They gave me an alien mate as punishment. I realized too late she chose me. Elias Mercer had never liked rules. Growing up on the edges of Earth's last human colonies, he learned early that rules were made to be challenged, especially when they were unfair. And yet here he was, standing in the cold, white halls of the Interstellar Council, staring at a sentence he could hardly believe. The Council, a body that claimed to uphold justice and order across countless star systems, had decided his punishment for defying their decree would not be execution, as he feared, but something far stranger. He would be bonded to an alien mate. The words had echoed in his mind ever since the sentence was announced. A permanent bonded mate, they had said, as though it were a mercy. For Elias, it felt like a cage. The Council intended it to be a humiliation, a way to break him. Humans were seen as volatile, impulsive, weak. The Council thought that forcing one into an unchosen partnership with an alien would teach him obedience and humility. Elias had argued, protested, even threatened, but none of it mattered. The Council's decision was final. The chamber emptied, leaving him alone with the hum of the energy walls and the cold weight of inevitability. He tried to imagine what kind of creature would be assigned to him. The Council's archives were vague on the matter. The aliens they used for these punishments were considered elite, rare, and highly respected. They were not cruel, exactly, but emotionally detached. Elias swallowed hard, knowing he was about to meet someone who probably regarded him as nothing more than a problem to manage. When the transport came, it glided silently into the chamber, and Elias caught his first glimpse of her. She was taller than any human, slender, with pale silver skin that shimmered faintly in the light. Her eyes were large, a deep shade of violet, and they seemed to look past him, into some place he could not reach. She moved with precise grace, a creature who had mastered her body in ways humans only dreamed of. Her presence made the room feel smaller, as though she took up more space than her physical body allowed. Elias' first instinct was caution. He had faced enemies before, but never like this. She said nothing, merely extended a hand in the formal greeting of her species. The Council official performing the introduction gave a small bow, then left without another word. "She's yours," he said, voice hollow. And just like that, the door sealed behind him, leaving Elias with the alien who would share his life. He wanted to speak, to test her, to understand the nature of this bond, but the words died in his throat. There was an unfamiliar hum in the air, something that made his chest tighten. He realized it was the bond activating. He could feel it, faint at first, like an echo of someone else's heartbeat brushing against his own. A strange warmth spread across his mind, almost like a whisper, and he instinctively recoiled. "Do you understand me?" he asked, his voice trembling more than he would have liked. She tilted her head slightly, and Elias thought he saw something like amusement in her eyes. But then she spoke, in a language he could not understand. The sound was melodic, soft, and somehow familiar. The translation device at his wrist blinked and converted it into English. "I accept." He froze. That simple phrase made his stomach drop. He had assumed she had been assigned to him randomly, as the Council often did, and that she had no choice. But now he wondered if there was more to it. Her calm acceptance made the punishment feel less like control and more like a challenge he had yet to understand. The first few days were tense. Elias learned quickly that living with someone bonded to you was not like living with a roommate or even a partner by choice. The bond shared emotions, and every minor irritation, every flicker of anger or fear, traveled between them. When he felt frustration, he caught glimpses of it reflected in her expression. When she was calm, he felt a strange serenity, as if her control was an anchor against his restless mind. He tried to test her. Do you even like me?" he asked one evening when the artificial sun of the habitat module was dimming to mimic Earth's night. She looked at him, her violet eyes catching the light. She did not answer immediately. The silence stretched, and Elias felt his pulse quicken. He expected disdain, indifference, something cold and alien. Instead, she spoke in her melodic language again, and the translation device blinked. "You are interesting." That was it. No warmth, no tenderness, no confession. Yet Elias felt a strange relief. There was no mockery in her tone, only observation. It was unsettling and fascinating all at once. He realized that perhaps this bond was not meant to crush him but to test him, to see what he was made of. He spent the following days in cautious observation. She learned human routines quickly, adapted to his habits, yet never lost her own rhythm. She moved through the habitat module with quiet purpose, cleaning, organizing, studying, but always aware of him. At first, Elias interpreted it as obligation. But little details caught his attention. She mirrored his actions in subtle ways. If he paused in thought, she paused too. If he smiled, even faintly, her lips twitched in recognition. And then there were moments he could not explain. He would wake in the artificial night to find her standing at the viewport, staring at the stars, and he would feel her curiosity, a ripple of wonder that the bond transmitted directly into his mind. Her species was supposed to be emotionally cold, detached from such trivial things. Yet here she was, reacting to the universe as a human might, though in her own way. Elias realized, with a mix of awe and unease, that he had been wrong to assume this was punishment in the way he understood it. The council might have intended to control him, but the bond was teaching him instead. It made him more aware, more deliberate, more in tune with another being who was not human, and yet whose mind had surprising parallels to his own. One night, as he struggled with insomnia, he heard her voice again, soft in the quiet module. "You resist too much," she said, words translated. "It is admirable." Elias sat up sharply. "Admirable?" he repeated, disbelief heavy in his voice. "You're supposed to despise me." She turned, her silver hair catching the faint light. "I was not given choice. I chose it." For a long moment he could only stare. The council had never mentioned that she might have requested him. They had made it sound like he was the prisoner, she the tool of punishment. But now he understood that she had entered this bond willingly, fully aware of the consequences. And that changed everything. It did not erase the tension. The idea of being bound to another mind, an alien mind, was still terrifying, but now it carried a different weight. The bond was no longer a chain. It was a challenge, a puzzle, a partnership that demanded understanding and trust, however small. Elias found himself watching her more closely than before. Every small gesture, every movement became a clue. She had chosen him, yes, but why? What did she see in a human that she valued so highly? He did not yet know. But as he lay awake, feeling the strange pulse of her presence through the bond, he realized that the answers would not come from resistance. They would come from observation, from learning, and perhaps, in time, from mutual respect. The days passed, blending into one another. Elias trained himself to notice details he had previously ignored. The way she moved through the corridors, the subtle changes in her expressions, the faint hum that seemed to precede any emotional surge. And in return, he felt himself changing, growing more aware of his own reactions, his own thoughts, and the power of his choices. The council believed they had sent a human to his doom. They thought the bond would humiliate, weaken, and control. But they had underestimated the human capacity for curiosity, resilience, and adaptation. Elias realized, with a cautious spark of hope, that perhaps this punishment was not an end, but the beginning of something entirely unexpected. And yet, even as he began to understand the bond, he could not shake a lingering unease. Sareth's violet eyes held secrets he could not decipher, and the quiet confidence she displayed suggested that she had her own reasons for choosing him, reasons he had yet to discover. The first part of their journey had begun, not with rebellion but with understanding. The punishment was in place, The bond activated, and Elias was learning that perhaps he had been wrong about everything. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps humans could inspire even the most detached alien minds to choose them. And perhaps, he thought, as he drifted into an uneasy sleep, the Council had made a mistake far greater than they could ever imagine. Life in the Habitat module had settled into a strange rhythm, one that Elias Mercer never could have imagined. The bond with Sareth pulsed faintly in his mind at all times, a constant reminder that he was never truly alone. At first, the weight of it had felt like a cage, but over weeks, it began to feel like a challenge, something he needed to understand rather than resist. And yet, understanding Sareth was proving to be far more complex than he expected. She moved with calm precision through every task, yet Elias could sense the subtle emotions she hid, the flickers of curiosity and even amusement that her species supposedly lacked. Every action she took seemed deliberate, measured, yet somehow alive with intent. Elias realized that he was learning her language, not through words, but through observation and intuition. He could feel her emotions as clearly as his own now. When she grew tense, he felt a pressure in his chest. When she was calm, a warmth spread through his mind. The bond had become a mirror of sorts, reflecting her inner world into his own. One morning, the Habitat's alert system began to beep urgently. A minor malfunction had occurred in the station's life support system, a problem that could escalate if not addressed quickly. Elias leapt into action, his military training kicking in. Sareth followed silently, moving beside him, her every gesture precise. The bond thrummed in his mind, her presence amplifying his focus rather than distracting him. "You know what to do," she said softly, her words translated into English by the device at his wrist. "I know," Elias replied, though he wasn't entirely sure. The truth was, he had learned to rely on her instincts as much as his own. Together, they worked through the system, checking each module, recalibrating oxygen and temperature levels, and rerouting power where necessary. He noticed how she adapted to his methods, not by copying but by anticipating, adjusting in ways that made their teamwork seamless. When the crisis was averted, Elias leaned against the control panel, exhausted but relieved. He glanced at her, and for the first time he saw an expression that was almost prideful. "You're impressive," he admitted, a hint of awe in his voice. She tilted her head, violet eyes meeting his. "You underestimate yourself," she said. Her words carried no mockery, only quiet truth. Humans survive where others would fail. You adapt. You endure. Elias frowned. "You've known that all along, haven't you?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she touched the panel lightly, her fingers leaving a faint trail of light on the surface. "I have watched. I chose you for this reason. You respond when tested. You continue when others would falter." He felt a jolt of understanding. She had not been assigned to him at random. She had requested the bond. She had studied humans, observed him, and decided that he was worth choosing. The Council had thought this punishment would humble him. In reality, it had brought him together with someone who had seen his potential long before he saw it himself. The revelation settled heavily in his mind. It was no longer punishment. It was a partnership, though he did not yet understand the full depth of it. And with that understanding came a new awareness. He had been underestimated not just by the Council, but by himself. Humans, despite their fragility in the eyes of other species, had something unique: curiosity, resilience, and a will to choose even in impossible circumstances. Days turned into weeks, and the bond deepened. Elias learned that Sareth had once belonged to a species that had ruled vast swaths of the galaxy. They had lost their edge, their adaptability, because they relied too much on tradition and control. Humans, in contrast, were unpredictable, capable of choice, and willing to act on instinct when necessary. Her fascination with him was not personal in the way he initially feared. It was a recognition of what humans still carried within them: the spark of survival, ingenuity, and courage. One evening, the habitat module's artificial sun dimmed into the simulated night, and Elias found himself unable to sleep. He wandered to the viewport, staring at the endless stars beyond the glass. Sareth appeared silently beside him, her presence a comforting weight in the bond. "Do you ever regret choosing me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She shook her head, eyes scanning the stars. "I do not regret. I have learned more about life in these weeks than in centuries of my own existence. You teach me what it is to feel, to understand, to respond to uncertainty." Elias laughed softly. "And I thought I was the one being punished." She turned to him then, and for a brief moment her expression softened, something almost like a smile. "Punishment is a matter of perspective. The council sought to break you. Instead, they created something neither of us expected." In that moment, Elias understood fully. The council had assumed that humans were weak, easy to control. They had not counted on the human capacity to inspire loyalty, trust, and even love across species. And they had certainly not anticipated that their attempt at humiliation would result in a bond stronger than any punishment could break. The turning point came when a transmission arrived from the council. A human colony, threatened by a neighboring alien faction, required immediate aid. The station where Elias and Sareth lived was strategically vital, and the council intended to send humans and aliens alike as a test of loyalty. Elias knew the mission would be dangerous, but he also knew that this was the moment to prove what humans could do, not through violence but through ingenuity, strategy, and resilience. He turned to Sareth. "We can't just sit here," he said. "We have to help them." Her violet eyes met his, bright with understanding. "Then we do it together," she said. The bond thrummed, a steady pulse of shared resolve. For the first time, Elias felt no fear, only purpose. The mission tested them both. Systems failed, communications dropped, and supplies ran low. But Elias discovered that the bond allowed them to work as one in ways he could never have imagined. When he thought of a solution, she anticipated complications. When she considered a course of action, he adapted instantly. Together, they navigated crises that would have overwhelmed separate individuals. And through it all, Elias realized that the council's plan had backfired spectacularly. Humans were not just surviving, they were excelling, inspiring the alien participants to trust and follow them. After the mission, when the colony was secure, Elias and Sareth returned to their habitat module. Exhausted but exhilarated, they stood in silence, connected by the bond, feeling the shared triumph. Elias finally understood something profound. The council's punishment had not made him weaker. It had revealed the strength that humans carried in their very nature, the courage to act, the intelligence to adapt, and the resilience to endure. Sareth spoke then, her voice soft, steady, and filled with quiet awe. "I chose you because you embody what humans still have in abundance: choice, courage, curiosity. You are not merely a human, I see what humans can be through you." Elias felt a warmth spread through him, not just from her words but from the bond itself. It was no longer a chain, no longer a sentence. It was a partnership, a union of minds that transcended species. And in that moment, he realized the full meaning of what she had done. She had chosen him, not because he was human, but because he had shown the qualities that humans alone could claim. For the first time since the council's sentence, Elias felt free. Free not because the bond had ended, but because it had transformed. The punishment had become a proving ground. The alien mate who was supposed to humiliate him had become his equal, and together they had discovered a truth the galaxy would struggle to ignore. Humans were not weak, predictable, or easily controlled. Humans inspired, they endured, and they chose, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As the artificial night deepened, Elias and Sareth stood together by the viewport, watching the stars in silence. The galaxy stretched endlessly before them, full of dangers, challenges, and unknown possibilities. And Elias knew that whatever came next, he would face it not as a punished human, but as a partner, chosen and trusted, capable of inspiring even the most detached alien mind. The council had thought they were controlling a human. Instead, they had unleashed the potential of both species, proving that human resilience and choice were forces that could not be ignored. And Elias Mercer, once sentenced to humiliation, now understood that the greatest power humans possessed was not their strength or intelligence alone. It was their ability to choose, to act, and to inspire others to follow them willingly. And somewhere in the quiet of the bond, he felt Sareth's agreement, a pulse of recognition and trust that spoke louder than words ever could. They had both chosen each other, and in that choice lay a strength the galaxy had never seen before. The stars outside continued to shine, indifferent and eternal, but Elias felt a spark within himself and the alien beside him, a spark that neither punishment, nor expectation, nor fear could ever extinguish. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had prevailed not through force, but through the courage to act, the wisdom to endure, and the simple, profound truth that choice, above all, mattered. And as he gazed at the infinite expanse of space, Elias Mercer finally smiled, knowing that he was no longer a prisoner of the council, but a testament to what humans could achieve when given even the smallest chance to choose. The galaxy was changing faster than Elias Mercer could have imagined. After the mission to save the human colony, the Interstellar Council had grown wary. They had thought that humans could be controlled, that a punishment like the bonded mate would keep them in line. They had been wrong. The bond with Sareth had not broken Elias. Instead, it had strengthened him, sharpened his mind, and given him insight into both human and alien ways of thinking. Elias and Sareth had returned to the habitat module, but they no longer felt confined by its walls. The bond had grown deeper, a constant pulse of awareness and understanding between them. Every action, every decision, every thought resonated through both of them. Elias had learned to anticipate Sareth's movements, her decisions, and her emotions, while she had begun to understand the subtle patterns of human instinct and reasoning. Together, they were no longer two separate beings. They were a partnership, a shared mind operating across species. The Council, of course, did not see it that way. Reports from the mission reached the high chambers, detailing how a human and his alien mate had not only survived, but had outperformed experienced officers and strategists. There was discomfort in the way their actions had inspired loyalty and efficiency among other species. Humans, the Council realized, were not merely unpredictable, they were contagious. Others began to follow them not out of fear, but because they chose to. Elias sensed the shift long before the Council acted. Sareth noticed it too. In the quiet of the habitat module, she commented one evening, her violet eyes reflecting the artificial starlight. They did not anticipate that humans inspire more than obedience. They inspire trust, respect, and courage. Elias nodded, thinking back to the colony mission. He remembered the alien officers who had initially doubted him, who had refused to follow his directions. By the end of the operation, they had done so willingly, coordinating with him and Sareth as equals rather than subordinates. He realized then that humans had something no other species seemed to fully understand, an instinct to act, to make choices even when constrained by rules or expectation. A few days later, a new alert arrived. A research station on a distant planet was under threat from an environmental disaster, a violent storm that could destroy the station and its inhabitants. The Council issued orders to dispatch a combined human-alien team. Elias and Sareth were assigned as coordinators. This time the stakes were higher. The storm was unpredictable, technology was limited, and the terrain was dangerous. It was the perfect test, and Elias knew that success would not come from force alone. As they prepared for departure, Sareth studied him, her expression thoughtful. "You have grown since the last mission," she observed. "You anticipate, you adapt, and you lead without relying solely on orders. You have changed the perception of humans." Elias smiled faintly, but there was seriousness in his eyes. "We didn't change perception alone. We showed them that humans can choose, and that choosing matters more than blindly following rules." When they arrived at the storm-threatened station, chaos reigned. Wind tore at structures, and the station's energy shields flickered under the strain. Communication systems were overloaded, and the human crew panicked. Elias immediately felt the bond intensify. Sareth's emotions merged with his own, amplifying his focus and calming the crew. Together, they coordinated a response. Elias directed the humans to secure critical equipment, while Sareth worked with the alien staff to stabilize the energy systems. It was not easy. Power surges threatened to shut down the station entirely, and parts of the structure began to collapse under the storm's force. Elias felt panic rise within him, but Sareth's presence steadied it, anchoring him. He realized then that the bond was more than emotional, it was tactical. They could anticipate problems, respond instantly, and coordinate across species in ways no single individual could achieve. Hours passed, each moment a test of endurance and skill. Elias and Sareth moved as one, reacting to the storm and guiding the team. At one point, a section of the station began to tear away. Elias knew the only way to save the remaining crew was to stabilize it manually. Sareth's voice echoed in his mind, calm and steady. "We can do this together." Elias nodded. With the bond amplifying his strength and focus, they moved into position. Together, they redirected energy flows, reinforced supports, and manually recalibrated systems. The station shuddered under the storm's fury, but slowly it held. The human and alien crew watched in astonishment as Elias and Sareth completed the task, seemingly without strain. When the storm finally passed, the station was intact, the crew safe. Elias looked at Sareth, exhaustion and awe mingling in his expression. "We did it," he said softly. She nodded, a rare warmth in her eyes. "Because we chose to act together. Choice is stronger than fear." Word of their success spread quickly. The council could no longer ignore the truth. Humans were not just resilient. They could inspire, lead, and innovate in ways that no rigid system could anticipate. The council sent envoys to study the bond, to understand how a human and an alien mate could accomplish what seasoned officers could not. Elias and Sareth returned to their module, but the bond now carried a new weight. It was no longer simply a connection of survival and cooperation. It was a symbol. Other species began to approach humans differently, with curiosity and respect rather than contempt or fear. Elias realized that the council had underestimated the ripple effect humans could create. One act of courage, one decision to act, could change not just the immediate outcome, but the perception of an entire species. In the quiet that followed, Elias reflected on Sareth's choice. She had requested the bond, studied him, and recognized his potential. The council thought they were punishing him, but in reality, she had seen something in him worth trusting, worth following. That trust had given him a perspective he never had before. Humans were more than their weaknesses. They were capable of inspiring loyalty, courage, and respect, even among the most detached aliens. As the artificial stars dimmed into night, Elias felt the bond's pulse steady, strong and confident. Sareth's presence was a constant reminder of what they had achieved and what lay ahead. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Elias asked, his voice low. She regarded him thoughtfully. "Always, but the future is shaped by action, not prediction. We choose, we act. That is how humans endure and thrive." Elias nodded. "Then we keep choosing together." In the days that followed, they continued their work, assisting colonies, coordinating interstellar missions, and mentoring humans and aliens alike. The bond became a symbol of collaboration, of the unexpected strength that could emerge when two species worked in unison. Humans, once underestimated, were now recognized as catalysts for progress, not just in engineering or combat, but in diplomacy, cooperation, and trust. Elias often thought about the council and the lesson their punishment had inadvertently taught. They had sent him a mate as a sentence, hoping to humiliate and control. Instead, they had unleashed something far greater, the proof that humans could inspire, lead, and achieve extraordinary things, not through coercion but through choice, courage, and partnership. One evening, as the habitat module hummed quietly around them, Elias watched Sareth study the stars. He felt the bond pulse, steady and warm. "Do you ever regret choosing me?" he asked again, curiosity still lingering. She shook her head gently, a faint light reflecting in her eyes. "Never. You taught me that humans still have what my species lost, the power to choose, to endure, and to inspire. That is something worth trusting." Elias smiled, a rare and genuine expression. He understood fully now that the bond had never been a punishment. It was an opportunity, a chance to prove what humans could achieve when they acted with courage, curiosity, and integrity. The galaxy might be vast and unpredictable, but humans had one advantage the Council could never control: the ability to choose and to act on those choices in ways that could change everything. As he stood beside Sareth, watching the endless stars, Elias felt hope, determination, and a quiet pride. Humanity had been tested, and humanity had risen. The Council had believed they could limit him, constrain him, or break him, but they had only strengthened the spark that made humans unique. And in the bond with Sareth, Elias knew that humans were not alone. Together, they represented what was possible when courage met trust, when choice met action, and when one species refused to be underestimated. The galaxy stretched before them, full of unknown dangers, challenges, and opportunities. But Elias Mercer, once sentenced to humiliation, now understood that the greatest power humans possessed was not in their strength alone. It was in their ability to choose, to act, and to inspire others to follow willingly. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the bond, Sareth's presence reassured him that their journey was only beginning. Humanity had proven its worth, but the universe was vast, and the opportunities to choose, to act, and to inspire were endless. Together, they would face whatever came next, as partners, as equals, and as a testament to what humans could truly achieve. For Elias Mercer, the punishment that had seemed so cruel was now a story of triumph, partnership, and the undeniable power of human choice. And the galaxy would never forget it. Elias Mercer and Sareth had grown accustomed to the rhythm of life aboard the station, yet the galaxy beyond remained unpredictable and vast. Each day brought new challenges, diplomatic missions, resource negotiations, and crises that tested their bond in ways neither had expected. But through every trial, they learned more about each other, about humanity, and about the subtle ways in which choice and courage could ripple across species. The latest mission was unlike anything they had faced before. A distant research outpost on the edge of Coalition space had sent a distress signal. A natural disaster, a massive volcanic eruption on the planet's surface, threatened the lives of scientists and their support crews. The Coalition had deemed the mission too dangerous for routine teams, so they sent Elias and Sareth. As they prepared for departure, Elias felt the familiar pulse of the bond. Sareth's presence was steady, reassuring, yet charged with anticipation. She had chosen him once long ago, and now every challenge seemed to reaffirm that choice. Elias understood more deeply than ever that their bond was not just a connection between two minds. It was a bridge between species, a living example of what could happen when humans acted with intelligence, courage, and empathy. The transport to the outpost was turbulent. Storms of charged plasma whipped across the planet's atmosphere, shaking the ship violently. Elias gripped the console, but he felt Sareth's calm in his mind, anchoring him. She guided him through adjustments to the navigation system, her instincts precise, her thoughts clear. The bond amplified both their abilities, allowing them to act faster than any standard human or alien team could manage. When they landed near the research outpost, the devastation was apparent. Lava streams cut across the terrain, destroying access routes and cutting off power to the facility. The scientists were trapped inside, relying on limited life support systems. Elias and Sareth moved quickly, coordinating the rescue operation. Elias directed human volunteers to establish safe pathways, while Sareth calculated structural integrity and energy reroutes for the outpost. Every command he gave, every decision he made, was supported by her presence. He felt her thoughts echoing in his mind, guiding him past missteps and revealing solutions he might have overlooked. The bond was no longer just emotional, it was tactical, strategic, and vital for survival. Hours passed as they navigated the disaster zone. Lava flows shifted unexpectedly, equipment malfunctioned, and panic threatened to spread among the trapped scientists. Elias realized that fear, even among experienced professionals, could undermine their survival. He focused on calming their minds through example, showing decisiveness and clarity. Sareth mirrored his actions, reinforcing confidence and clarity with a calm precision that humans could only aspire to emulate. At one point, a bridge of molten rock threatened to sever the only safe route to the main lab. Elias felt the pulse of the bond intensify. Sareth spoke directly into his mind, not words, but intention. Move forward, trust the calculations, coordinate the team. He nodded, understanding instantly. Together, they engineered a temporary support system from the outpost's remaining materials, redirecting energy and reinforcing structural beams. Scientists crossed safely, guided by the bond's subtle influence, their panic replaced by determination. After the immediate danger passed, Elias and Sareth stood at the edge of the outpost, watching the lava flows subside. Exhaustion weighed on them, but there was also a profound sense of achievement. They had saved lives not through brute force, but through collaboration, intelligence, and the trust that came from the bond. "It is remarkable," Elias said quietly, wiping sweat from his brow. "How much can be accomplished when humans and others work together, when trust is real, and choices are made freely." Sareth regarded him thoughtfully, her violet eyes reflecting the glow of molten rock. "That is what I saw when I chose you. Humans still carry the spark of choice, courage, and creativity. The Council thought they could control you, but instead they have shown me that partnership across species can achieve what rules alone never could." The mission earned them recognition across coalition space. For the first time, human ingenuity was not only respected, but actively sought. Leaders of other species began consulting humans on matters of strategy, diplomacy, and survival. The Council, once skeptical and controlling, realized that humans were catalysts for cooperation rather than chaos. But Elias knew that their work was far from over. Each mission revealed new challenges, new unknowns, and the vast potential of collaboration. He had come to understand that human value was not in power or aggression, but in adaptability, insight, and the willingness to act wisely when choice was available. Sareth's presence reinforced this truth daily, reminding him that the bond was both a guide and a mirror, reflecting not just his strengths but the qualities that made humans unique. In quiet moments, Elias pondered the nature of their bond. Sareth had chosen him, but he realized that choice was now reciprocal. Every decision he made, every action he took, influenced her as profoundly as hers influenced him. They had become partners not only in survival but in understanding. Each challenge brought them closer, not romantically, but in respect, trust, and a shared vision of what humanity could achieve. One evening, as the artificial stars simulated a calm night, Elias watched Sareth study a distant planet. "Do you think the Council will ever fully understand what humans are capable of?" he asked. She shook her head slowly. "They will learn eventually, but humans do not need their approval. They only need the opportunity to choose, to act, and to inspire." Elias smiled faintly. "And yet they keep trying to control us." Sareth's violet eyes softened. "Control is an illusion. True power lies in choice, in courage, and in the trust others place in you. That is why I chose you and why the bond works. Together, we embody what humans can achieve when their strengths are recognized, not constrained." Days turned into weeks, and their reputation continued to grow. Elias and Sareth were called upon for increasingly complex missions, negotiating peace between rival colonies, coordinating disaster relief across multiple planets, and advising young humans and aliens on leadership. Each mission reinforced the same lesson. Humans, when trusted and given the freedom to choose, could exceed expectations and inspire those around them. During a particularly difficult mission, Elias reflected on their journey. He remembered the Council's initial sentence, the fear and uncertainty he had felt when first bonded with Sareth, and the long path they had traveled together. What had begun as punishment had become an opportunity to demonstrate human resilience, intelligence, and courage in a universe that had underestimated them. Sareth observed his reflection silently, sensing his thoughts through the bond. "You have learned much," she said softly, "more than I could have imagined when I first chose you, and yet there is always more to learn. The galaxy is vast, and humans have only begun to show their potential." Elias nodded, feeling the truth of her words. The bond had revealed something essential. Humans were capable of greatness, not because of physical strength or technological advantage, but because of their choices, their courage, and their capacity to act wisely even in the face of uncertainty. A new challenge arrived soon after. A neighboring system threatened to invade a neutral colony, claiming resources for themselves. The coalition debated intervention, but the decision was delayed by politics and bureaucracy. Elias and Sareth, trusted now for their judgment and coordination, were asked to assess the situation and propose a solution. On their approach, Elias noticed the tension in the alien and human observers alike. Both sides were wary, prepared for conflict. Elias felt the bond pulse sharply. Sareth's thoughts aligned with his own. Negotiation and strategy would be more effective than force. They moved carefully, speaking with both leaders, proposing solutions that balanced resources, security, and mutual benefit. Hours of negotiation followed, with Elias and Sareth guiding dialogue, mediating misunderstandings, and presenting options. The bond allowed them to sense emotional cues, anticipate reactions, and adjust their approach dynamically. By the end, both sides agreed to a plan that satisfied all parties, avoiding conflict entirely. As the transport returned to their station, Elias looked at Sareth. "We've done more than survive. We've influenced others to act wisely, to trust, and to cooperate." She nodded, a rare hint of a smile in her expression. And that is the essence of what humans can offer: choice, courage, understanding. Even when constrained, even when tested, humans can create outcomes no system of control could predict. Elias reflected on the Council's initial sentence. What had seemed like punishment had become a proving ground, showing that human resilience and the willingness to act wisely could not be contained. Through every mission, every challenge, and every decision, he had proven not just his own worth, but the enduring strength of humanity. As they watched the stars fade into artificial dawn, Elias felt a profound sense of purpose. The galaxy was still unpredictable, full of danger and opportunity, but he understood that humans had something unique to offer, something the Council had tried to suppress but could not: choice, courage, and the ability to inspire others. And with Sareth at his side, he knew that this potential would continue to grow. Elias Mercer had begun as a punished human, underestimated and constrained. Now he stood as a living example of human strength, intellect, and courage. The galaxy had tested him, the Council had tried to control him, and yet humanity had prevailed, not through brute force, but through the power of choice, collaboration, and resilience. And as the bond pulsed gently between them, Elias understood one final truth. The greatest strength of humanity was not in what they possessed, but in what they could inspire in others. With Sareth by his side, he knew the journey was far from over. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown challenges and opportunities for humans to prove their worth again and again. And so, as stars stretched infinitely before them, Elias Mercer smiled, ready to face whatever came next, guided by choice, courage, and the enduring power of human potential.